welcome in to the Gaming Discourse. I'm Tyler Frater alongside Richard De La Cruz.
Hello.
And Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater.
I am also here.
It is June 3rd, 2021. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse. We post videos. Working on a new video right now about Medal of Honor Allied Assault and its two expansions, Spearhead and Breakthrough, which I'll talk a little bit about here in a second. I actually played a little bit of video games this week.
Those are the PC versions, right?
Yes, so they released in 2002. I think it was 2002. And yeah, I think it was the first Medal of Honors to come to PC, because the first Medal of Honor was PlayStation. Medal of Honor Underground was PlayStation. Yep. And then Allied Assault came out for the PC. And Allied Assault's considered like the first big. Well, I don't know how to consider it. A lot of people consider it like.
I mean, that it was an exclusive.
It was that, and
PC game.
Consider it sort of like the cinematic, the birth of like cinematic, not over the top, but what's the word I'm looking for? Like an adventure, that kind of thing. Sort of like what Naughty Dog does or
bombastic,
explosive, that kind of thing. Anyway, but I'll talk about all that in a second. Yes, but it came to PC, and that was before Medal of Honor Frontline, and I keep hitting your laptop. I'm sorry. Medal of Honor Frontline and
Rising Sun.
And yeah, Rising Sun and Pacific Assault, which I think was another PC. Anyway, so we've got some updated technology. I'm very excited to announce that, and this is for real. We have a soundboard Xbox that works and that is always going to work, because it's in Elgato. We hope. Yeah. So we don't have to. We don't have to.
You made promises. Now it's going to stop working next week. We don't
have to rely on a. We don't have to rely on a laptop that's connected via Bluetooth or whatever it was.
We better get the recorder ready, because E3's in like 2 weeks.
I know.
Week and a half.
So. Guess who's going to be there? Xbox. Right. Okay, I'll stop.
He's excited.
Is Xbox going to be there?
Yes. I know. And E3 is. There's like. Between June 5th, I think, and 15th, there's like six or seven different.
There's 4 days.
Yeah, there's like 6 or 7 different companies.
There's a lot.
Doing stuff.
Like Capcom's doing something this time.
Yeah, and so you have Summer Game Fest. You have IGN's doing a thing. The Guerrilla Collective, which is new, they're doing a thing. I think that's like just in a couple of days. But anyway, so it's funny because this week is sort of. There's not a whole lot going on this week. At least there hasn't been.
Leaks are hitting.
So you've got leaks. There was a Battlefield leak, and but over the course of like the next week, 2 weeks, that's when stuff's really gonna explode, and it's gonna be gigantic. Anyway, so we'll start off with what you've been playing. How about that?
Sure. I've been roped into Apex Legends again.
Oh boy.
Yeah. We have been playing Call of Duty, and I still play Call of Duty. I'll say again, despite its yearly releases, I think Call of Duty, by and large, is still a very solidly made first-person shooter game for the most part. But its Warzone aspect is also good, but left to be desired on the crossplay field, because we have a friend who wants to play with us, and we've been trying consistently both on the Black Ops multiplayer and Warzone, and we just have a lot of problems. Like we're always getting disconnected. We always can never hear each other, or if he's in the party, someone else gets kicked, vice versa. We can never figure out if it's the connection or just the crossplay functionality. So
interesting.
He was mentioning that he was playing Apex, and we all still want to play together, of course. So he talked about it enough that it was just like, fine, all right, I'll get it again. And so I of course downloaded it and started playing again, and they have a new mode. There is of course the normal BR mode with new maps. They got new maps, and so there's new areas. You switch between, they alternate every X amount of time. I'm not certain what the time frame is, but they alternate. And then there's a new mode called Arenas. I don't know if it's just for this season or a permanent thing, but it's essentially just a 3-on-3 deathmatch. Which I have played a lot, and I greatly enjoy, because it's Counter-Strike-esque. You have a buy menu and a certain currency at the beginning. Choose what your weapons, go out, and then on the field there are canisters that you pick up that will give you more currency for the next round. Of course, killing also gives you currency as well, I believe. But I find it the learning curve is a lot more difficult, because you have to every character can do something different. So you can't approach every situation the same because you need to know who you're fighting against because they can do certain things that other characters can't. And so that throws a wrench in like my play style because, you know, I'm not just pointing a gun at somebody and like shooting them. I have to watch out. They're able to launch themselves over me and like I have to quickly react to that, or if they can disappear and like go somewhere else. So it's more of a thinking man's game, I guess I'll say. But don't take that phrase too seriously because it's still just first person shooter. But I've been having fun with it. And it's dug its teeth into me. So I'm kind of like, I want to play Apex again. And that was coming off of Returnal, which I'll move on to Returnal now. I began to get a little discouraged with because the second act is so much harder than the first act. But I have determined, and I should have known this a long time ago, that it is 100% fully based on your RNG, like what your run is going to entail as far as what your pickups will be. Your parasites, your artifacts, your guns are very important because the pistol is terrible, especially at this point. Like it is awful, and they keep shoving it down my throat, and I don't want it. Give me another weapon. But I was almost, I don't want to say I was ready to give it up, but I was ready to drop it for a while, especially since Ratchet and Clank is coming out soon. But I played it the other night and I had a breakthrough, and I had a great run, and I had great abilities. I had great parasites. I had a great weapon, several great weapons. And I ended up beating the first boss in that biome for the very first time. And then I moved on to the second biome and ended up dying halfway through that. But that reinvigorated my interest to play some more, just because now I can enter the game and think of it as, all right, well, you just have to have a good run. Like if I know that I'm not progressing well, I might as well just, you know, end it so that I can start a new run and see what the pickups are on that side. So it's something I got to think about in the future when I play it. But that boss is wild, and I showed Connor gameplay from that particular boss, and it's
there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. yeah, absolutely. And you gotta I wish you had more dodges in that game. You only have one dodge, and then there's a cooldown, but you can encounter a parasite or whatnot that will lower that cooldown. But still, I wish you had like multiple stacks of dodges. I think it would make it a lot I wouldn't say interesting. It'd give me a helping hand, basically, is what I'm saying. Ultimately, it'll be easier. but yeah, just those two. That's all I've been doing.
Okay, Connor.
So this week I had planned to like play video games because I really had nothing going on, and then life happened, and I haven't played a single video game.
I'm sorry.
Love life.
Fine. Yeah,
love life.
It's the greatest. That's what I've got to report on.
Exciting. Yep. Okay. Medal of Honor Allied Assault. So I beat Allied Assault, and I beat Spearhead, which was the first expansion that came out a few months afterward, and I'm playing through Breakthrough right now. It's really interesting to go back and play these older Medal of Honor games, because in a lot of ways, so when you take horrific, scary, like battles and stuff like that, and you try and present it in a way that's scary, I think that's more difficult for video games because nowadays a lot of it is quaint. So like if you watch Band of Brothers today and you watch the D-Day scene where they're jumping out of the airplanes, it is still one of the most horrifying scenes you will ever see in any movie or TV show, right? Yeah. And if it were 2002 and you were playing Medal of Honor Allied Assault or Spearhead, which is the expansion where you actually jump out of an airplane, you're playing part of somebody who is in the airborne, and it's 2002, you're probably just as scared because that's the best looking game that you know of at the moment, right? But here we are almost 20 years later, and now it's sort of kind of silly looking. And it feels awkward, but I think you have to keep I think you have to keep things in context, because at the time that was as scary and as dramatic as they can make it. Yeah. And that's the same thing with, if you watch The Longest Day and some actor gets shot and he does like the cheesy 1960s, death on screen. It's like, obviously In the
the world on
1960s, that was the best they could do with war movies, you know?
Yeah.
And that was pretty much it until Saving Private Ryan, you know? So I think that's interesting when you're playing it through, because you're seeing developers, you're looking back 20 years and seeing developers try and make something really intense, really dramatic. And it's hard to judge because of the age, but it's still very good. It's very basic. And like I was alluding to at the beginning, people can, I think on Wikipedia, there's an entry somewhere where their critics consider it like one of the first big sort of cinematic single player games ever made, which is interesting. And it is in a lot of ways. Your characters don't really talk a lot. The one character narrates his story, but it's just sort of like, there's not a whole lot of personality. It's sort of just soldier guy telling what's going on. So and the other two characters are silent protagonists most of the time. So there's not a whole lot of characterization, but again, if you think about 2002, some of the scenes, some of the set pieces are really freaking cool. There's a part where you're in the Battle of the Bulge, and there's this really long trench, and the Germans are are attacking. They're assaulting this trench, and it's just super foggy, and you just sort of have to wait for the Germans to get close enough to you that they run out of the fog, and then you start to shoot at them, and you have to run back and forth down this trench as there's like friendlies in the trench that are firing back and stuff like that. And again, for 2002, I think like that was probably super intense, really, really exciting. The other thing that the game does is, and I think this may have been, I don't think Elias Stolt had any direct association with Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg, obviously,
The first game
was
from him.
Medal of Honor exists partially because Steven Spielberg wanted to make a World War II video game. After that, I don't know when his involvement exited or whatever, but there is heavy influence. Like, you can see portions of the game where if your guy had, you know, a cowboy hat on and a whip dangling by his side, it would be Indiana Jones. Because there's this phenomenal, the game has just a ridiculously good soundtrack. It's a soundtrack that is still good today. It is ridiculous how good this soundtrack is. And it's very John Williams. You hear Star Wars, you hear Indiana Jones. And so when you're escaping a German base and the alarm is going off and you're running through the corridors and, you know, you turn a corner and there's a guy in a machine gun, so you have to duck back behind the cover and toss a grenade, and you've got this sort of really reminiscent Indiana Jones score going, where instead of dun 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 dun, it's the Medal of Honor theme. It's really exciting and it's really fun. And for 2002, that's really freaking cool that they were able to deliver that sort of cinematic experience. Now, as far as like gameplay is concerned, by this time you had Halo, right? Which Halo was, I mean, there was vehicle sequences and flying sequences and all kinds of crazy weaponry and this amazing story. So it really is sort of I think what Medal of Honor had going for it in 2002 is the setting, right? It was World War II. It was historical. And the sort of movie-esque element of it, where, you know, airplanes flying overhead, or I don't know, there's one point where you're playing as, you're fighting at the Battle of Berlin, and you're driving up to this arch, and a Russian fighter flies through the arch, and then a German fighter is chasing him, and the German fighter hits the side of the arch and spins out of control and runs into a building, and it's all very cinematic and like everything's very actiony and movie, and it never loses sight of that, which is interesting, because I think, you know, I really disliked Medal of Honor World War II, and Call of Duty World War II. Yeah. And an interesting comparison is how similar Call of Duty World War II is with Medal of Honor Allied Assault. Yeah. There's a tank sequence in World War II that is just as simplistic as the tank sequence in Allied Assault. But again, Allied Assault 2002, Call of Duty World War II 2018 or whatever it was, 2017. Yeah. So when I look back at Call of Duty World War II, that makes me really annoyed, because I think with how much the talent and ability of developers has progressed, you could tell so much better of a story than Call of Duty World War II did. And it's like they deliver sort of on the same level that Medal of Honor delivered on back then. But again, Medal of Honor was in 2002, you know?
Yeah.
So while both have sort of very basic tank sequences, the one in 2002 was really cool because it's not something you got a whole lot. Whereas
Well, I think
Call of Duty World War II.
that's more just that the Medal of Honor set the groundwork for the cliches to be made, and then
Yes, you're correct.
Yeah.
They definitely did.
I guess that's you're
because
putting
you
it
can
much
have
better than
that,
I did.
You can have that tank sequence as long as it's not, the cliche tank sequence like Medal of Honor did, not like Medal of Honor did, but make it unique. Have your own tank sequence instead of just doing the generic tank sequence. Oh, tank ambush.
Yeah, and that's a good point, and I should have put it like that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the things that Allied Assault does is cliched, but it wasn't cliched by its own
time,
standards. Yeah.
And I think I did that with in World War II. Call of Duty World War II. In that part where you had to infiltrate the Nazi building, and you had to answer questions when guys like talk to you or whatnot. Whenever that happened, I was like, "Wow, it's just like Medal of Honor Underground." Because I think Underground had a sequence where
and a lot of them do. You got to show papers,
or you gotta, which that was the first time I remember ever doing something like that. So. I agree, and that Medal of Honor probably laid the groundwork for a lot of that stuff because that was the only one. That was the one that started it as far as like, I guess World War II military shooters go.
World War II.
Yeah, and one thing that Allied Assault does really well is its beach landing scene. A lot of it is literally cut and pasted straight out of Saving Private Ryan, like a lot of the dialogue.
Sure.
Which again,
yeah.
So was Call of Duty World War II. Like I remember when that came out, we had the podcast, and I said, as soon as the game started and you were in a mic boat, I narrated it before it happened. It was so predictable. But in Allied Assault, you land and you're like 30 feet outside of the beach. Well, more. You're like, I don't know, like 50 yards outside of the beach, and you can't even see where the gunfire is coming from. And even a 20-year-old game was still really scary, because all you saw were just quick tracers, and your character's waist high in water, and so you kind of just have to look for cover, and there's just dudes sort of running in random directions. And again, for 2002, that must have been really a really intense experience. That. Like, when you look at, I'm picking on Call of Duty World War II for really no other reason than it's just a good example, I guess.
Yeah.
But, where Call of Duty World War II, obviously the production value is much higher and you have better acting and more voice acting and stuff like that. But the set pieces and the story that it tells,
they just grabbed the nearest cliche.
It just doesn't take anything much, very far. It kind of makes you miss Brothers in Arms 1 and like Battlefield Bad Company, because those could tell interesting stories with interesting characters that had to do with warfare and stuff like that. But anyway, so yeah, I'll have more to say once I write the video for that. The other game that I played a little bit of was, I can't even remember its name. Project Wingman. So Project Wingman came out in December. It is a Ace Combat that was kickstarted by people that wanted a traditional Ace Combat game, and it's VR enabled, so I got into it, and it's fun. I'm not a huge Ace Combat fan, but I'm a huge VR fan. So if you could put me into a jet cockpit and let me dogfight other jets in VR, it's great. It's very arcadey. It's not a simulator at all. I don't know if it's my PC or what, but it doesn't run super well, and I don't know why.
Is it full release or?
Yeah, it's full release, and I don't think it's that super demanding of a game.
At least compared to the other ones you've played.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't think it's.
Is it index compatible?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
So, and that's the thing. So the index has a higher resolution than the Rift does, right? So the index is gonna eat more power. And so with my PC, the way it is right now, if I place certain games on the index, because the higher resolution makes games look better, but I have to have them on lower settings, right? Because of the higher resolution.
Yeah.
Because it can't process stuff at higher resolutions or whatever as much. So like with Elite Dangerous, if I'm running it on the Rift, I think I can run pretty much everything on ultra settings. if not close. But on the index, because of the higher resolution, I have things at medium and high, and it's sort of a mixed bag because of the higher resolution. And I'm sure there are other reasons than just the resolution. But so there is that. There is that the index is a little more demanding. But yeah, even then, it still feels like, because the game isn't that, I don't think it's that graphically intensive, and it doesn't seem to run super well. It also has trouble centering. Like you have to, you get into the game and you recenter the game, but the menu still feels like it's an awkward place to look at. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And then once you actually get into the cockpit of an airplane, you can press the right stick down and it'll refocus the camera. So it seems like every time I'm getting into a cockpit, I'm sort of adjusting my seat and refocusing the camera to get it right. And that makes you really appreciate other games where you reset the camera once and you're good. You don't have to keep adjusting it. Go ahead.
This is made for VR? Or
no, it's not VR only.
Okay, so it's an option.
Yeah,
okay.
Which is why
it might be something they're probably working on.
Which is why I suspect it may just be it's not a bad port, or port's the wrong word to use there. It's not a bad VR game.
Integration.
It just sounds like they're learning.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel as polished as a lot of VR and a lot of games with VR options are. But it's still really fun. It's a completely fictional world where, like, I don't remember, global warming happens and California sinks into the ocean, and so the entire world is different countries and
fictional.
But I mean, it's a lot of fun. There was one
Life
moment.
Imitates art, et cetera.
There was one moment I was playing where I was chasing a jet, and there are like the special jets, like Yellow Squadron and Ace Combat 4, and they're a lot better than their compatriots. And so I'm chasing after this jet, and there was this really cool moment where I couldn't see the jet because we were in clouds, but my HUD told me where the jet was. And so I was chasing it with my guns, and I was trying to get the nose up so I could get the guns on it. And we both sort of exited the top of the clouds at the same time. So it's kind of like the scene in the Matrix when they get above the clouds and there's like the sun.
Yeah.
Oh,
so it's like we're both like racing through these clouds and both sort of emerge from the clouds at the same time, and I'm trying to get my guns on them. But that, speaking of Top Gun, that is a very Top Gun game. Come on, trying to get just an inch on the guy so you can let loose on the guns. A lot of fun. And that's actually one that I think I'll play a little bit more of. My other criticism is there are different airplanes that supposedly have different, and maybe I just need to play more, but like all these different airplanes are supposed to have different feels to them, and I don't really know if they feel all that different. But maybe that's just because I haven't tried out all the airplanes and whatnot. But anyway, I'll have to play it more. I'm excited for it. That's it. Are we ready to move on?
Yes.
Yeah.
We want to give a massive shout out to the sponsors of this episode. They have been silently supporting us since the beginning, and we felt it was time to give them some love. The like and share buttons have been at our side since episode 1 of the podcast. They can be found right beneath this episode. Please give them a click, it helps us greatly. If you are feeling lucky, click the bell icon to enter for a notification anytime we post new content. You may be surprised by what you get.
No, not getting that one yet. Far Cry 6. Far Cry 6 is political. So we got some. I know we got some background here. Far Cry 6 is set on Yara, which is a fictional island in the Caribbean that takes some inspiration from Cuba. I think it was last week or a couple days ago. Far Cry 6 narrative director Navid Kavari told The Gamer in a recent interview, quote, "We actually went down to Cuba to speak to actual guerrilla fighters who fought back in the 50s and 60s, and we just really fell in love with their stories. But we also fell in love with the culture and people we met. When we came out of that, it wasn't that we felt we had to do Cuba. We realized it's a complicated island and our game doesn't want to make a political statement about what's happening in Cuba specifically. For us, it felt like doing the island of Yara would help us tell that story while being very open about our politics and inspiration," end quote. This caught some flack. If you don't know, Ubisoft is famous for trying to skirt around the word of politics, and that's for a lot of different reasons, and saying their game isn't political, and they're not the only company that does this. They're just sort of famous for doing it because their games usually are
fairly political.
Well, not only fairly political, but like blunt in a
Yeah,
lot of
it's on
ways.
the nose.
The opening of Division 2 is like, the United States went under, people with guns survived. It's like, oh, okay, jeez. Anyway, so this caught some flack, partially because of Ubisoft's history. Kavari then, in a blog post, further said, quote, "Our story is political. A story about a modern revolution must be. There are hard, relevant discussions in Far Cry 6 about the conditions that lead to the rise of fascism in a nation, the costs of imperialism, forced labor, the need for free and fair elections, LGBTQ rights, and more. The conversations and research done on the perspectives of those who fought in revolutions and beyond are absolutely reflected in our story and characters. But if anyone is seeking a simplified binary political statement specifically on the current political climate in Cuba, they won't find it," end quote.
Yeah, I mean, everything. Yeah, everything.
Everything is political.
Yeah.
So there are a couple different all right, so there are a couple different angles here,
Yeah.
right? So one, there's the what is politics and why is it an issue for games to be political? Why is that a thing, right? The other thing
Sorry. Go ahead.
the other thing is Kavari's statements here. So we have to sort of sift through this for a second, right? Because I think there are two different stories. And then there's the third story, which is how are they connected to each other. So go ahead.
First off, I applaud Kavari and his straightforwardness, like just straight out saying, yeah, like what do you are you guys, it's kind of like he's saying, are you guys dumb? Like this is
Don't
what
you
it's
have
about.
phones?
Right. Secondly, like if you don't think like the plot of Super Mario Bros is Mario taking down like Bowser because he's like a fascist leader, it's like, come on. I mean, he's not necessarily fascist, but
Yeah.
that's political. If you really want to be pedantic and dig into it, or
I mean, city skylines, you can get into the politics because of like setting tax brackets. And everything.
Isn't that what Tropico is all about
Yeah.
too? Yeah, like Final Fantasy VII, once again, very political. Capitalism and video games are political.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
by nature. So I don't know. I think that depending on the type of story that you're going to create, particularly on an island in the Caribbean, which is known, especially in the history, for having particular amounts of like agriculture to provide for trade around the world.
Yeah.
It's and you're going to have multiple like sections of people like vying for like those particular spots, and there's bound to be stories of
Hence
guerrilla
his
warfare and
reference
stuff.
to imperialism.
Right.
Yeah.
And yes, this doesn't necessarily, of course, the first thing we think about is Cuba because they're probably the most famous nation
Noteworthy,
that had instances of this, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's about Cuba, which I kind of disagree on, but yeah, no, I applaud Kavari on his response for this, and God damn it, I know Ubisoft doesn't want to step on it. Well, none of these companies want to step on anybody's toes, especially China.
Yeah.
But this is ridiculous when it's so in your face as Far Cry 6 is.
Yes.
I mean, Far Cry 4 was political.
Yeah, all the Far Cries
Yeah.
are political, and it really it's tough to define like what politics means, right? Because I don't understand why I think people in their minds have created a straw man of what that means, right? So if they hear X game as political, I think what the image they create in their mind is that it's a game that instead of prioritizing its own experience or enjoyment or entertainment or anything else,
It's going to focus an agenda.
it's just gonna lecture you about something, right? And what's interesting is that I've never played a game that's done that to me, maybe except Metal Gear Solid. And so when people get up in arms about games being political, I wish the complaints were a little more laser focused, because it's really nebulous.
Yeah.
And I think it's a litmus test because what they're really saying is, I don't like the politics in this game, right? So that is really the issue. Now, the issue with Far Cry 6, I think what he said is completely reasonable. And this is a huge breath of fresh air for Ubisoft, because Ubisoft did beat around the bush, and I think you should criticize them for that. Whether or not with The Division 2, Ubisoft wanted to advocate for gun ownership and fewer restrictions on gun control, right, with the opening of the video, is independent of the fact that that's what the opening of the video implies, right? So you can make a game or a story that's about something and not necessarily advocate for that thing. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's super complicated. But when you shove it all under the rug because you're afraid of, gamers or whatever, and you just say none of it's political, that's where Ubisoft catches a lot of the flack. Now, I think some of the reaction to this was unfair. Kotaku put out a piece that I thought was just horrible, which, again, you can criticize Ubisoft for a lot of stuff, and we do almost every podcast. But Kotaku put out the piece that was like, Ubisoft says, and then in brackets, game's name is not political because, and so they made like a template because this happens so often.
Yeah.
But reading this statement, it's not that, this isn't that shove under the rug statement that Ubisoft has produced, in the past 5 years or whatever. So I thought that was sort of a really weird swing and a miss at Kotaku. And I think that's worth some heavy criticism. And then there was an update right at the bottom of the piece that said, he says the game is political in this blog post. Well, then he tears apart your entire sophomoric trying to be funny articles. You should take it down. But I thought that was, I don't want to say tasteless because it wasn't like, I don't know, that may be a little overreaction. But I think jumping the gun, I think it was just unreasonable. I think if you wanted to talk about, if it came out when they were saying that Watch Dogs Legion was apolitical or whatever, that would make sense. But this is clearly somebody who's not doing what Ubisoft has done in the past, right? Which is why I think you have to give a lot of credit to him. So yeah, and I think everyone sort of is on that. I think on that wavelength.
Ultimately, I think saying that it's not political is also a disservice to the people that they interviewed and gained all this information from. It's because it's clearly they found inspiration in it. And wanted to pay tribute in some way, and here comes Ubisoft. It's like, no, that's not what it's about. And it's like, well, yeah, it's obvious. You're showing us that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And so yeah, rightfully so. They got dragged through the mud, and all of Twitter and whatnot. But this is a wild story.
Yeah, and so I'm glad. That I don't know if this was something that he did independently on his own, or if this is something that Ubisoft wanted to change internally or whatever.
Well, I hope he does not get reprimanded.
But this is how you should talk about your games, right? Like if you're making games that have a lot of political undertones or anything like that, I think you should just be open about it and just say, the story we're telling has a lot of these different angles. But we're not going to give. But at the same time, not every game has to be a documentary that spans 120 hours about every single angle of history about something, right? So I think what he said is perfectly reasonable, is great, and I really hope that more developers see it this way. And well, maybe not developers, but definitely publishers. Yeah, because publishers are so afraid of the backlash, right? Of backlash, and I think I don't know. I wish that they would have more courage, but we're talking about publishers and giant corporations, so they don't. But if this is a sign for more things to come, then I'm totally for it. Richard, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to make a weird point, or I guess I wanted to remark on something. But I think that looking at the trailer for Far Cry 6. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but
just the first one.
The game looks wild and it looks fun. But behind it, of course, you have all the undertones and the politicalness of it. And I think that with the information that Kavari and his team got from the guerrilla warriors and whatnot, I think that this can be games like this can be used as a learning tool, a teaching tool in some ways. I'm not explaining it well, but it's he explained it in an article. It's look, we're just trying to show that these are the reasons why fascism can occur and whatnot. Because if you try to make a game that's just kind of telling you gamers need that excitement. You know what I mean? And that's why I say that like Far Cry looks like fun as hell, because yeah, you get these like really cool shooting games, but the normal person will miss the point. And I think that like games like this, I think it's neat to point out that it is political, because you may have somebody who doesn't usually look at their games in that particular light maybe play this one and have fun, but at the same time take away something from it. Mm-hmm. I don't know where I was going with that, not even. Where you're going is a good place to go. Sure.
Because I think I understand what you're saying, right?
Like I love. We're gonna go back to Metal Gear. The Metal Gear
Sure.
Solid I played that game. I was 10, 11 years old, like in 1999, 2000, and the game had so much cool stuff to it that the story itself, the cutscenes that Kojima used of all the like military footage and stuff, like blew me away, because I felt like I was actually learning something about the real world, and it felt very adult to me. So at a particular age, at a particular time, I think that for the right people, they can take away something from this. And that's why I feel like when Ubisoft comes out and tries to diminish the work that's being done here, whether or not it's going to be taken in a serious way, I think that sucks in a way.
Yeah.
Because other people can take it as a good thing, educational wise.
Yeah, and I think if you feel as though that games can be analyzed and dissected as serious works of art and stuff like that, then like this is the result, right? And this is the sort of developers, this is the sort of sentiment that I would want developers to have, right? Is not to shy away from heavy topics. Mm-hmm. And again, like he said here, that does not mean they need to have encyclopedic breakdown of some point in history and everything that happened and the economic impact and the social impact of some wars and different points of, like, it doesn't need to be that. It can talk about themes that are overarching that span different generations and different places, right? Like guerrilla warfare was not fought in one point of the world at one time, right? It's fought in tons of places and still is today and probably will for a super long time. So, I think I'm just going to go, I'll try and close this because I don't want to go off on too many tangents here, but I think this is good. Mm-hmm. I think it's a good thing that I don't want to give Ubisoft the credit. So I'll just give Kavari credit and hope that Ubisoft follows closely, because this is the attitude that I think developers should take. And if people have problems with this, I just don't see why. Because there's so much out there that you can talk about in similar fashion, right? I mean, if you want to talk about fascism, let me tell you about, the biggest franchise there is on Earth, Star Wars, and what that has to say about fascism, stuff like that, right? So yeah, anyway, sorry, I hit your computer again. Connor, right. You were going to say something?
Yes, just one thing. And it's poignant on the topic of being political. I think Yves Guillemot needs to take a point from Kavari and address the issue when it's brought up.
Yeah, well, I don't think we're going to get that. So, former Blizzard devs have... Oh, I was going to do the thing. I forgot we have a soundboard. Jason Schreier has a story for us.
Jason Schreier report.
That's the first time in years we've used that. Super satisfying.
Yeah, it has been years.
It has been years. Jason Schreier of Bloomberg wrote a story about multiple former Blizzard devs that left and have formed their own companies to make the games they want. So in recent years, like I said, ex-Blizzard developers from all different levels, from... I don't know if a chief creative officer would be an executive, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, from chief creative officer down to developers have left to create their own studios. They've created sort of a network in the Irvine, California area made of multiple studios, and they call themselves Blizzard 2.0. It's obviously not official.
Sure.
But it's sort of a sort of a joke, I would guess. Some of these companies in 2016, former Blizzard CCO Rob Pardo formed Bonfire Studios, and then in just recent weeks, Lightforge Games, One More Game, and Raid Base have all announced their existence, all with strong connections to Blizzard. I have a quote here, but I did not write down the person's first name, so I'm going to look this up. His last name is Morton, so I did not write down his first name. The co-founder of Frost Giant Games says AAA companies are looking for massive money makers and nothing else. Another former Blizzard dev, Tim Morton, thank you. Okay. So this is a story about Tim Morton. Left the company along with other Blizzard staff and created Frost Giant Studios. Thank you, Tyler, for getting your notes. Oh, you're welcome, Tyler. Anyway, so he moved on to make an RTS because they still believe in the power of RTS games. Morton had some interesting things to say, including that big publishers like Activision Blizzard, as I said, billion-dollar franchises and nothing else. He told this to Jason Schreier, quote, "My perception of RTS as a genre is that Blizzard has made money with it, but it's all about orders of magnitude." And the problem with RTS apparently is that because Blizzard doesn't want to have anything to do with it, the only place where you can try and prove that RTSs are big money makers, or at least substantial money makers, is in the more riskier environment of venture-backed capital. So something that I guess...
because Blizzard has never released a highly successful RTS game
That keeps making money.
and we definitely don't have a post of it right behind you, Tyler.
Hey, look at that.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
Kerrigan.
Yeah.
Whoa, weird. Go ahead.
Yeah, RTSs make tons of money. Hearts of Iron, like the Hearts of Iron series is RTS, right?
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah. Is it? No?
It's
I
grand
thought it was,
strategy.
sorry, I thought it was a little strategy. Okay.
I mean,
Maybe I'm-
I guess it's not really RTS because you don't control
It's not
individual
a
units.
base builder.
Yeah, and then I mean, I guess technically Civilization is an RTS,
Yeah.
right? No, I mean, not in the
It's a turn-based strategy.
truest form of the word, but
It's a strategy.
okay. Well,
they all get lumped
I
together
feel like
anyway.
I see tons of RTS games on Steam, like just front and center, and they're always on sale. But maybe that's me. But yeah, I mean, why not? Why not take all of the teams or important players who made Blizzard what it is and create a new studio? It's funny that you stated that it's in Irvine, California, because I mean, if you don't know, that's where Blizzard is.
Yep.
So it's like just set up shop right next door, and it's like
We should name it Snowstorm.
that'll be good. But we did see this. Like, I mean, when Activision bought Blizzard, I think we all collectively went, "Oh no! Like, what's going to happen?"
How
And
long ago was that?
It was a while ago. It was like I think 3+ years ago. Maybe.
Okay.
But it took a while for, I guess, the saturation of Activision to catch up with Blizzard, because here we are now. The last 2 years of Blizzard has really dropped the ball on a lot of things. And now we're seeing the consequences of that purchase, so to speak.
This definitely fits into the narrative that I think Schreier has reported on a lot in recent years, that Activision is sort of further extending its power over Blizzard. Blizzard is becoming less and less Blizzard and more Activision. And Blizzard's done things that, like with Diablo Immortal being one, the other one being Blitzchung, right?
Mm-hmm.
That complete freaking debacle. So Blizzard's done stuff that I don't know if it came down from Activision or what, but that didn't make the company look good regardless. But it also fits the narrative that AAA companies like Blizzard or like Activision have unsustainable ideas for what the games industry should be, right? Unsustainable, and also just, I don't know, annoying.
Incorrect.
I don't even know. I don't know if I'd say incorrect. Just exhausting.
Yeah.
Because there are multiple examples of games that aren't gonna make a bajillion dollars, but they sell well and they can make a business run. And that it just bothers me. So I don't understand why the AAA industry I guess it doesn't have to exist. I guess it exists because it makes enough money that
exist.
like 50 people make a lot of money. Therefore, the AAA industry exists, So it may just come down to that. I don't know. But it's really frustrating. And it's interesting to hear entire genres be talked about as though you can only do them like, we need some angel investor to come in and, forget $50,000 on a table somewhere or something ridiculous. as if RTS games don't exist at all.
Yeah.
Which, again, it's just silly. So it fits those two narratives really well. It makes me feel bad for Blizzard. Now, the other thing is this happens a lot. Like, devs leave and create their own studios all the time.
Yeah.
Right? So one question I would have is this happening more in the past 5 years than it did, 2015 to 2000? That I don't think like hard data on that exists, but it would be interesting to ask people to see their opinions about that, because in recent years, not only have we had stories like this where it was, I got tired of working for the corporation, Logan's Run, the corporation. I got tired of working for the corporation, so I went out and created my own studio, and now I'm doing my own thing. You have stories like Amy Hennig, where it's, I want to work at a place where we don't have to crunch as much. So you have all these different reactions to stuff in the industry. And yeah, is this happening more often than it did?
I think it's happening more solely based on the fact of the prolific growth of games in the game industry. The industry has gotten large enough that everything is starting to splinter off and form different little groups, just like you would see with any industry as it starts to get bigger.
And I think Paradox Interactive is always a good example there, because they've cornered a market on a niche. They've cornered a niche market, and I think on the whole, they've done an amazing job. People complain. It seems like every time they release a DLC, there's some new controversy. But I think on the whole, Connor laughs because I think I'm speaking truth somewhat.
Well, it's because every time there's DLC that comes out, the comments are like, well, why couldn't this been in the base game? It's like, well, because they didn't have it in the base game. They weren't done with it yet. And people like you are the reason.
In any case, Paradox Interactive, I think, is a really good example, because Paradox is not looking to take over the world.
No.
Right?
Well,
not buy
IRL.
the world with money, I guess.
Not IRL, just in game.
Yeah, just in game. They're not looking to do that. So because their goals are sustainable, because their goals are reachable, they can corner a niche market and they're fine, right? Whereas like Blizzard or Activision, it's like their goal is world domination. So it has to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's just not sustainable. And it's not practical, and I don't think it makes games as good as they can be, right? Because you have to make them for large markets, and you have to fill them with microtransactions, and you have to do all these other things that are super corporate and unfun. And yeah, I hope that these companies succeed, because I think there is something to I don't know, games being made by people that actually want to make them, especially when you're super enthusiastic about a certain genre. And what makes me mad is this keeps being proved wrong, right?
Well, if there's anything I know about video games, Tyler, it's cowboy games don't sell. Nobody wants single player games.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, Frost Giant Studios, but RTSs are out.
Yeah. I think if there's one thing I know about video games,
it's everything I just said is wrong.
Yeah, it's that everything you said is wrong. And if a game comes out tomorrow in some genre that's never existed before, people are going to trip over themselves, right?
Yeah.
Cyberpunk wasn't a huge thing until Cyberpunk 2077, right? What does Strauss-Zelnick think about that? Well, Cyberpunk, who would have guessed? And it's like, now it's just everywhere, right? You have tons of games being released in Cyberpunk because one company decided, hey, to make a game based off this tabletop game. And here we are. So yeah, AAA companies they lack innovation. They don't have a lot of initiative. They're reactive instead of proactive, where I think in a lot of ways, it wasn't always like that. Assassin's Creed, the first Assassin's Creed was proactive. It was innovative. Medal of Honor Allied Assault was innovative, Halo was innovative. But now you play Halo, and Halo 4 was Halo Call of Duty,
Capitalism, baby.
So it's
late stage capitalism.
It's trying to retrofit itself to the trends, to current trends, as opposed to further innovating, or just staying true to itself,
game,
And that's what the AAA industry does, because you can't have a modestly successful game. You have to have these gigantic blockbuster selling titans that continuously grow and can compete with other blockbuster, selling titans. And I totally understand why some people would leave. And yeah, Connor, you made a good point. More people play games now than ever, which means the market's bigger, which means there are more niche audiences out there. There are more audiences for stuff. Jesus Christ. The other year, a game came out that was, I forget what it was called. It was the RPG that was trying to be as historically accurate as possible. And was set
Kingdom Come Deliverance.
Right? Set in some obscure, like 1327 or whatever it was. It wasn't that long ago, but it was like some obscure time in some obscure place in medieval Europe, and people just fell over themselves with this game, right? So I think executives think that people just want the same thing over and over and over again. And people will buy the same thing over and over and over again. But I think consumers are also really excited for stuff that's brand new, right?
Yeah.
And I think you see that with Ghost of Tsushima, with Horizon Zero Dawn, right? These new titles that blow the doors open, and so it's like, well, here's a brand new thing we can do. Anyway,
it
someone else want to talk.
With older, like big, huge, that are now big, huge games. Like, just going back to my point, Red Dead. Like, again, people love Red Dead because it was just a good game. Red Dead 2, amazing. And they existed because they just put the game out there, they made a good game, and it was successful.
Yes. Yep.
I think it's prime time for this type of stuff to happen, because I know we've been talking about it for the last like 5-10 minutes, but and they're right. These AAA studios are chasing after the almighty dollar, and they are going to get it. They've gotten some of my money, admittedly, but
mine too.
and like I mentioned, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, it's like I'm seeing guys run around Call of Duty with certain skins, and I see that skin was $20, like $20 for that thing, and I see it, and so they are making their money. But I think these developers who want to make games because they love games know how to market their games to people who stream on Twitch, people who are on TikTok, people who are on Twitter. Like they know how to tickle the fancy of those who want it, because we have things like Donut County. We have things like Untitled Goose Game. Chris Tales is coming out. People are excited about that RPG. I forgot what it was called, but it was shown off during the Game Awards, where you're a bicyclist and you're recounting.
By Scavenger Studio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
forgot the name of that one too. I can see it in my head though.
But
tons of people are. I'm excited for that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you have studios. Wow, I can't believe I can't remember their name.
Supergiant Games.
Annapurna. They hit after hit. Devolver Studios or Devolver Digital, hit after hit. So I just think that it's high time that a lot of people are realizing that they can make it on their own without the AAA audience, because you look at, we'll bring back Ubisoft, Watch Dogs, Division, Assassin's Creed,
Far
Cry, now Immortals. Now they plan on making Immortals the thing.
Yeah.
That's their 5 franchises. Rayman, Rabbids, whatever.
They have some smaller franchises.
Yeah, they got smaller, so Just Dance, whatever. But
and then you have Beyond Good and Evil that's somewhere out there.
Maybe. But they have those franchises that they keep falling back on. Activision has Call of Duty. That's it. You get those same franchises over and over. 2K has NBA. They have wrestling. Of course, EA has Madden, all the sports titles that they'll keep every year making money off of. So these developers and studios are just going to make their own path, and I think they'll be very successful in the future on it, because one, people don't want to start paying $70 for games, and that's apparent. If a whole other argument is made, people wouldn't mind that being, that price, but they will look at something like I'll go back to Untitled Goose Game, a $20 game. Hey, I'll pick that up, and especially since my favorite streamer told me to go buy it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think it's prime time for that.
And I was going to mention that I think, how do I put this? It just makes so much sense that I guess if you're going to make your own studio, that this is the time to do it. With how many platforms there are, with how many different ways there are to release your game, where you can release it through Epic and you get more money in the cut than you do with Steam or whatever. And yeah, more people play games than ever, so you're more likely to find that niche audience because the sample size of people that play games is already larger than it's already been. Yeah. And you have consoles that give you different stuff that you can do, and you have Switch that if you announce a game for Switch, it's like people are excited because they just want to use their Switch so desperately. I'm one of them. So yeah, I guess if there is a time to leave and start your own studio and sort of do your own thing, it's now. And Supergiant Games is another one that is it Supergiant or Supergiant Games?
I mean, we know who you're talking about.
One of them. Hades, they didn't crunch on Hades. They
Every single game except Pyre is a hit.
Yeah, and so it's like, obviously not every studio is going to be like that. You're not every studio is going to release every single game is going to be a hit. But, you mentioned Devolver Digital. Raw Fury is another publisher that knows what they're into. They're not going to take over the world with the kind of games they publish, and they're fine with that, and that's their goal. And because of that, you get really good games on a consistent basis, and developers who are passionate about doing that, as opposed to corporate schlock that's vomited out of the mouth of regurgitated nonsense every year. And maybe that's too harsh, probably a little too harsh. But anyway, in my mind, I just kept thinking about how proud Strauss Zelnick was. We did a cowboy game and it did great. Thanks, bro. Yeah, who would have thunk?
Everything that's happening now with people leaving developers and forming their own, it's the natural progression of things. You hit a critical mass and there's a splintering. And this is good for the games industry as a whole, because then there's going to be, one, more games being developed out there for people to play, and two, now you're going to have these smaller developers putting out probably good games. We're going to assume they're going to be good games. But I hope they're good games.
Yes.
And then people are going to start to realize that, we can, don't have to, only follow these big developers that are putting out the same game every year, and we can pick up Untitled Goose Game for $20 or Game X that's going to be an RTS for $20+, I don't know, and have a good time. And that's going to hopefully force the larger companies of the game industry to start to diversify or to focus down a single path and only do that thing.
And it really is, the AAA industry really is far less diverse than it was 20 years ago, than 15 years ago, right? And I'm gonna, this is gonna be horrible, just horrible, but think about Electronic Arts today. EA does, every now and then they forget about it and then they do a Star Wars game, Battlefield, and Madden, right? But back in the day, you had Command and Conquer, you had different franchises, right? And different, speaking of an RTS,
Battlefield 2142.
You had different franchises and different genres doing different stuff.
You always had a serious franchise and then a wacky franchise. You'd have Madden, but on the opposite end, you'd have NFL Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd have SSX snowboarding, and then you just have normal snowboarding.
But it's been consolidated into sort of the not monolithic, but into the money making franchises, and then go from there. And again, the AAA industry is reactive, not proactive, and I don't think it innovates as much as it could. The what's the phrase I'm looking for? Production quality is up there, right? So I forget the actor's name that was in Call of Duty World War II, but all the actors, they looked amazing in the game, right? The visuals were great, and that stuff's fine, but that's basically where it ends, right? And the same, I'm sure we're getting a reveal of a new Battlefield in like 6 days, and I'm sure it's going to look amazing. But yeah, like, is there going to be substance? I don't know. Is it going to be innovative? I don't know.
If there's a woman on the cover.
I'll take 5 copies, please.
Politics. Richard,
What?
do you have tidbits?
Yeah, I do. Sorry, I was like, what are you talking to me about?
Sorry, I didn't expect us to go 30 minutes on the AAA industry, man. It's so lax in innovation, man.
Well, damn it, we're angry. Team Asobi is now a fully fledged studio at Sony.
Hooray.
The studio has announced that they are expanding and have also introduced a new logo to go with it. Team Asobi is the ones behind all of the Astrobot games, all 3 of them. So congratulations to them. I hope we get like an actual full Astrobot game. That's gonna be fun.
Yep.
The PlayStation 3
takes over the world.
Sure. The PlayStation world, that'd be great. Another crossover. PlayStation 3 received
Sony can't do crossovers.
No, they can. They received a prize. Oh my god. The PlayStation 3 received a surprise software update, which helped with, you probably guessed it, system stability. It didn't do anything else but system stability.
Now that is a tidbit.
Yeah. And Super Mario Bros. The Morton Jankel cut has added 20 minutes to the live-action movie, the original live-action movie from the early 90s. The Super Mario Bros. The Movie Archive is a collective people who are archiving all things about the live-action film. Been working years to find the original footage. It was named after the 2 directors of the original film. Several VHS tapes containing these extra scenes were retrieved by them back in 2019. And since then, artist Garrett Gilchrist has successfully restored several of these scenes, including an extended club scene and the introduction of rival plumbers to the original movie, extending it by 20 minutes. So,
Oh wow! Oh, it's like Apocalypse Now. You know, in 5 years we're gonna have a brand new Super Mario Bros. Cut.
I can only hope, because I've mentioned this a couple times this week, but I kind of like the movie. It's not good.
Oh,
it's not good.
I've never seen. It's bad. I've only seen like reviews of it.
Yeah.
But I never actually sat down to watch it.
Yeah, it's not good. Especially if you try to like think, this isn't Mario. No, it's terrible. But it's fun because it's terrible. It's one of those. There have been a couple leaks, of course. We have a apparently very true rumor that because Schreier reported on it that what's the studio for Axis that does XCOM?
Yes,
for Axis.
It sounds right.
They are doing a XCOM Marvel, like a Marvel XCOM game that is set to be revealed soon. There is a rumor that Team Ninja is doing a game called Final Fantasy Origin that will be basically a Souls-like game, but set in the Final Fantasy universe, based off the very first Final Fantasy game.
Interesting.
And then another last rumor is that Arc System Works is developing another fighting game, very similar to Dragon Ball FighterZ, but based off of the My Hero Academia franchise. Which is one of the more popular animes out there right now. But those are the tidbits for this week.
Thank you very much. So the Marvel. Sorry, all I could think about was like how horrible some of your soldiers died in XCOM. It's like, imagine seeing Spider-Man get eaten by one of the little spider things in XCOM. Like sweet Jesus.
Or the chrysalids
the chrysalids, those things. Did you ever play XCOM?
Yeah, I played XCOM. No, not 2. I know. I played
so
XCOM
there's names called the chrysalids. I don't know if they were in the first XCOM.
Yeah.
They were, but they would like stab your soldier
and turn him into a zombie.
And then turn him into a zombie. So if you had some soldier that you really liked, it would turn into a zombie, and then the zombie would come after one of your other soldiers.
You have to kill your own men. So demoralizing.
Yeah, I played XCOM 2 a lot with cheats on, but
soldiers can't die. Thank you.
Exactly. Okay. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse, where we post videos. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.